My name is Naomi, and I am 68 years old. For the past 3 years, I have lived under my son David's roof, believing I was helping to build the foundation for my grandson Liam's future. That foundation crumbled into dust last Christmas Eve with a single sentence spoken over glazed ham and cranberry sauce. It was a word that changed everything, a word that finally made me see the price tag hanging from my own heart. Before I share what happened in that dining room and the quiet storm that followed, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from today. If you have ever felt taken for granted by someone you love, please let me know in the comments below. And if you want to follow this journey of a grandmother reclaiming her peace, hit that subscribe button. This story is just the first whisper of the avalanche. I called it helping. That is what I told myself every single day for 3 years. I was not a guest in my son David's house. I was a foundational pillar. When my husband Gerald passed 5 years ago, the world lost its color and its sound for a long time. So when David and his wife Chloe suggested I sell my little condo and move into their new bigger house, it felt like a lifeline. They said it was for Liam, my then 13-year-old grandson, so he could have his grandma close. They said it was for me so I would not be alone. I believed them. I saw the gleaming hardwood floors and the huge kitchen island, and I thought, this is what family does. We build a nest together. What I did not see, not at first, was the financial blueprint they had already drawn up with me in the center. Not as the matriarch, but as the underwriter. David was in sales, always talking about his next big deal, but the deals seemed to float away like smoke. Chloe did not work. She called herself a homemaker and an influencer, which meant she took photographs of her latte art and the expensive throw pillows she bought. The down payment for that house. It came from Gerald's life insurance policy, the one I had meant to be my security. The monthly mortgage was astronomical. David sat me down with a spreadsheet, his face a mask of weary concern. Mom, with you here, we can swing this. Think of the investment. Think of the stability for Liam. So I agreed to cover 75% of the payment. It was for family. It was an investment. The bills did not stop there. The utility bills in that sprawling house were staggering. The pool pump, Mom, David would say with a sigh. The AC for this square footage. So I took on the electricity, the water, the gas. Chloe handed me her credit card statement one day, tears in her eyes. Naomi, I just got so carried away getting things to make our home beautiful for all of us. The charges were for designer home goods and clothing. I paid it. I told myself it was easier than conflict. Then it was the car insurance for both their cars. Then it was the health insurance premiums. Then it was Liam's brand new laptop for school and his driving lessons, and the used car for his 16th birthday. My pension from my years as a school librarian and our savings were siphoned away month after month into the bottomless well of their curated life. And the work. I cooked dinner 5 nights a week, I did the grocery shopping, I folded laundry until my back ached, I weeded the garden, I became the live-in housekeeper, nanny, and chef, all while writing check after check. My friend Marlene Sharp as a tack and living happily alone in a 55-plus community saw right through it. Over our weekly phone call, she would say, Naomi, you are not a grandmother. You are a venture capitalist funding a bad startup. And honey, they are burning through the capital. I would laugh it off defensive. They need me, Marlene. I am helping. She would just hum a low, knowing sound. You keep telling yourself that, sweetie. Just remember when the capital runs out, startups fold. The signs were there, tiny cracks in the pretty facade. They took a trip to Mexico, just the two of them. A romantic getaway, Mom, Chloe said, not meeting my eye. You understand. They had a new digital lock installed on the interior door that separated my wing, which was really a glorified office with a sofa bed from the main house. They forgot to give me the code for 2 weeks. I had to knock to get to the kitchen in my own home. Liam, my sweet boy, started turning down our Friday movie nights. Sorry, Grandma swamped with homework, he would mumble, rushing up to his room. One afternoon, Chloe was scrolling on her tablet and said almost to herself, This Silver Oaks community looks amazing, so many activities, and such peace and quiet. She showed me a picture of smiling seniors in a crafts room. It was a hint, dropped like a stone into a still pond. I chose not to see the ripples. I went to sleep on December 23rd, feeling like the glue holding my family's beautiful picture together. I had spent the whole day baking pies, preparing the honey-glazed ham, stringing lights. I wrote a check for the special organic turkey Chloe had ordered. My body was tired, but my heart was full of a fragile, hopeful warmth. I had no idea I was about to be peeled off and discarded like a price tag they no longer wanted to see. The table looked like a magazine spread. Crystal, gleamed silverware shone, and the centerpiece was a fragrant arrangement of pine and holly. The smell of roast turkey and freshly baked rolls filled the air. I sat at one end looking at my family. David, handsome in his crisp shirt, Chloe glowing in a new red dress, Liam tall and awkward fiddling with his phone under the table. I felt a swell of pride. I had made this. I had paid for this. This was my legacy, this warmth, this abundance. The meal began with pleasantries. We passed plates. Compliments were given on the food. For a brief, golden moment, it was everything I had dreamed it would be. Then, Chloe cleared her throat. So, as we look ahead to the new year, David and I have been doing some serious thinking about our future. Our real future. She glanced at David, who nodded, putting down his fork. My own fork hovered in midair. Something in her tone, a rehearsed crispness, made the fine hairs on my arm stand up. David took a sip of wine. Mom, we need to have a talk, a real talk. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. It was the smile he used for difficult clients. Chloe and I, we feel it's time. Time we started living our lives without the burden. It's holding us back. The word hung in the air heavier than the chandelier above us. Burden. The clatter of my fork hitting my good china plate was shockingly loud. I'm sorry. My voice sounded small, far away. Chloe reached over and patted my hand, her touch icy. It's not personal, Naomi. It's just the energy in the house. It's time for us to be a nuclear family, just the three of us, you understand. Understand? I repeated, my mind scrambling. David, I pay for this life, this house, this food, the cars. What burden? David sighed, a long, suffering exhalation. See, that's the thing, Mom. It's always about the money. You use it to control us. You hold it over our heads. We want our independence back. We want our home back. He said, home, as if I were a squatter. Chloe jumped in her voice, bright and poisonous. We've done our research. We've found a lovely assisted living community over in Maple Hill. It has activities, people your own age. You would not have to lift a finger. Assisted living. The words were a physical blow. I looked at Liam. His head was bowed, his shoulders hunched. He was studying his mashed potatoes as if they held the secrets of the universe. He knew. He had known this was coming. Liam, I whispered. He did not look up. A single tear splashed onto his plate. That tiny, silent confirmation broke something open inside me. This was not a sudden decision. This was a planned coup, a board meeting where I was the item to be voted off the island. I pushed my chair back, the legs screeching against the floor. The room tilted. The beautiful food now looked grotesque. The twinkling lights felt mocking. I looked at my son, my only child, and I did not see the little boy I had rocked to sleep. I saw a stranger, a businessman, finalizing a hostile takeover. His eyes were not filled with guilt or sorrow, but with a steely resolve to see this through. I see, I said, my voice miraculously steady. I see everything. I turned and walked out of the dining room through the too bright kitchen and down the hall to my room. The wing. The burden's quarters. I closed the door softly behind me and leaned against it. From the dining room I heard a low murmur of voices and then, unbelievably, a short, relieved laugh. The sound was more crushing than the word. They were celebrating. That night, the fairy tale I had been living in burned to the ground. I cried silent, heaving sobs into my pillow so they would not hear. I cried for Gerald, who had worked so hard to build our security. I cried for the little boy David had been. I cried for myself, for my own stupidity, for buying love with dollars until the well was dry. And in the cold, ashen silence of Christmas morning, a new Naomi began to wake up. A Naomi who was done paying for her own dismissal. Christmas morning dawned gray and silent. The house was still. I had not slept. I had spent the night in a state of cold clarity. The grief was still there, a vast ocean of it, but I was no longer drowning in it. I was building a raft, and the first planks were made of pure, unemotional fact. I got up at 6. I took a long, hot shower. I dressed in comfortable, practical clothes I could move in. I made a pot of strong coffee in the kitchen, the empty dining room, a ghostly monument to the night before. I took my notebook, the one I used for grocery lists, and I started a new list. At the top, I wrote, what I pay for. And I began to write. The mortgage lender account number, monthly amount, the electric company, the water, the gas, the insurance agencies for home cars health, the credit card companies. I listed every single automatic payment, every check I wrote routinely. I noted the login information, the passwords I knew. It was a staggering column of numbers. Seeing it on paper in my own neat handwriting was a revelation. It was not help. It was a full-scale subsidy. At 8, I called Marlene. She answered on the second ring. Merry Christmas, you. Ready for the grandkid extravaganza? Marlene, I said, and my voice did not shake. You were right about everything. There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then, oh, honey, what happened? They called me a burden. They want me in an assisted living home last night. I heard her sharp intake of breath, then a low, furious curse. Those little ingrates, that sanctimonious little... Okay, what do you need? Can you come get me tomorrow morning? I will be packed and ready. 9 o'clock sharp, she said. No hesitation. I will bring my SUV. Do you need me to come sooner? Do you need a place to stay tonight? No, I said, looking around the room that was never truly mine. I need to do this part myself, but thank you. See you tomorrow. The call gave me strength. I was not alone. I began to pack. I had brought suitcases with me 3 years ago, and they were still in the closet, dusty. I took only what was mine. My clothing, my photographs of Gerald and of David as a child, my favorite books, the small porcelain bird my mother had given me, the Afghan I had crocheted. I left behind the expensive purse Chloe had given me for my birthday, the jewelry, the fancy kitchen gadgets they had gifted me over the years. I wanted no souvenirs from this prison. Around noon, Liam knocked softly on my door. He looked miserable. Grandma? Come in, Liam. He shuffled in hands in his pockets. I am so sorry, he blurted out, his eyes filling. I did not know they would say it like that. I heard them talking about it for weeks, but I thought it was just talk. I looked at my grandson, this young man caught in the middle. My heart ached for him, but a new, firmer part of me held back. You did know something, Liam, and you chose not to warn me. That is a choice I will remember. I saw him flinch, and I softened my tone, but not my message. But I want you to know something, and I need you to listen. My love for you is not a bill that needs to be paid. It is not a mortgage. It is yours, free and clear, now and always. That does not change. He started to cry, then genuine, shoulder-shaking sobs. I held him, this boy who was almost a man, and let him cry. I did not promise him everything would be okay. I did not tell him it was not his fault. It was a complicated mess, and he was part of it. But he was also my grandson. The rest of the day, David and Chloe stayed out of my way. I heard them whispering in the living room, the low murmur of the television. They thought the hard part was over. They thought I was in my room, licking my wounds, preparing to be shipped off to Maple Hill. They had no clue about the quiet storm gathering in my heart, the detailed ledger I was preparing, or the friend with an SUV arriving in the morning. As I taped up the last box, I felt a strange lightness. For years, I had carried the weight of their world on my shoulders, on my back, on my dwindling bank balance. Now, I was setting it down, and I knew with a certainty that felt like the first truth I had known in years that I would not be picking it back up. The morning of December 26th was crisp and clear. I was dressed. My boxes were by the front door, and I was sitting at the kitchen island with my folder of paperwork when David and Chloe came downstairs. They were dressed casually, but Chloe's makeup was perfect. David's hair was gelled. They had a purpose. They looked at my boxes, then at each other, a flicker of confusion passing between them. Mom, what's all this? David asked, his voice careful. This is my departure, I said calmly. You said you wanted your home back. I am giving it to you. Chloe's face lit up with a triumphant, poorly concealed smile. Oh, Naomi, that's so wise. We knew you'd see reason. We have the brochures for Maple Hill right here. We can go tour it today. I held up a hand. No, thank you. I have made my own arrangements. I opened my folder and slid 2 copies of my list across the island to them. But first we need to settle accounts. This is a list of every single financial obligation I have been covering for this household. David picked up his copy, his eyes scanning the page. His face paled. What is this? It is the truth, David. As of today, I am terminating all my contributions. I have spent the morning online, canceling every automatic payment. The joint accounts are being closed as we speak. You will receive the final bills in your names starting next month. The color drained from Chloe's face as she snatched up the other copy. Her eyes darted down the column. The mortgage, the car payment, the American Express, David. Her voice rose to a shriek. This is over $4,000 a month. David slammed his hand on the counter. This is blackmail. You are trying to punish us for being honest. I remained seated, my posture straight. No, you were honest. You said I was a burden. A burden pays its own way and then leaves you in peace. So consider me unburdened. I looked at him. My son, his face twisted in anger and dawning panic. From now on, you will build the life you wanted without me, on your own dime. I wish you the best of luck. Where will you go? He spat out a last desperate attempt to regain control. You have nowhere to go. You can't afford anything on your own. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I stood up. That will be my ride. I walked to the front door and opened it. There stood Marlene in a warm parka and sensible boots, her keys in her hand. She gave me a small, solid nod, then looked past me at David and Chloe, who had followed me into the foyer. Her gaze was like granite. Marlene, these are my boxes, I said, gesturing. Got it, she said, and without a word to my son and his wife, she picked up the first box and carried it out to her SUV. David was speechless, his mouth opening and closing. Chloe looked like she was about to be sick, the reality of grocery bills and gas bills and mortgage bills crashing down on her. I picked up my purse and the folder. I took one last look around the grand foyer at the staircase I had helped pay for at the expensive art on the walls. Goodbye, David. Goodbye, Chloe. I looked at Liam, who had appeared at the top of the stairs, his face a mask of shock. Goodbye, Liam. I love you. My phone number will not change. And then I walked out. I did not look back. I got into the passenger seat of Marlene's SUV, closed the door, and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 3 years. As Marlene's car pulled away from the curb, I did not look back at the house. I looked at the road ahead, winding through the suburban streets. The sun was breaking through the clouds. For the first time in years, the road was mine. The apartment was small, a studio in Marlene's 55-plus community. It had a living area with a kitchenette, a separate bedroom just big enough for a bed and a dresser and a bathroom. The walls were beige. The carpet was neutral. It was blank, impersonal, and it was the most beautiful space I had ever seen because it was entirely, completely, 100% mine. The first thing I did was open the blinds. Sunlight poured in. With Marlene's help, I unpacked in a few hours. I put Gerald's picture on the bedside table. I arranged my books on a small shelf. I draped my Afghan over the back of the one armchair. It began to feel like me. That evening, Marlene ordered pizza and we ate it on paper plates, sitting on the floor. We did not talk much about what happened. We just were. The silence was not empty. It was full of a new, peaceful potential. The first week was a strange limbo. The relief was profound, but it was tinged with waves of grief and anger that would rise up unexpectedly. I would be making tea and suddenly be furious over the price of the kettle I had bought for their kitchen. I would wake up in the night feeling a deep, lonely ache for the family I thought I had. But every morning I made coffee in my own little pot and sat in my chair. No one demanded anything. No one sighed over a bill. The quiet was a balm. Then the calls from David started. The first call 2 days after I left was all fury. Mom, you are ruining us. The bank called about the mortgage. They said the automatic payment was canceled. What am I supposed to do? You are supposed to pay your mortgage, David, I said, my voice calm. Like every other homeowner. He sputtered and hung up. The second call, a week later, was softer, manipulative. Mom, I am sorry about the word burden. That was harsh. Can we talk? Liam misses you so much. He is not eating. We are all just hurting. Liam has my number, I said. He is welcome to call me or visit me any time to talk, but we are not talking about money, David. That conversation is over. The third call, about a month in, was pure, unvarnished panic. His voice was thin, strained. Mom, we are in trouble. Real trouble. Chloe is talking about leaving. We might have to sell the house. The market is bad. We will lose everything. Please, just help us with this one payment just to get us through this month. I listened. I heard the fear, and a part of me, the old mother part, wanted to jump in and fix it. But the new part, The part that had been forged in the fire of that Christmas dinner held firm. I am not a bank, David. I am your mother. And you made it clear you did not want the mother, you wanted the bank account. The account is now closed. I paused. I am sorry you are struggling. I truly am. But your financial choices are yours to manage now. Liam did come to visit. He took the bus. He looked older, more tired. He told me the house was tense and sad. His parents fought constantly about money. Chloe was selling her designer bags online. David was working later and coming home angry. My heart broke for him, but I did not offer to fix it. I made him grilled cheese sandwiches. I asked about school. I gave him $20 for the movies with his friends. I showed him that my love was separate, a constant, steady thing that did not come with a price tag or a condition. He started to relax in my little apartment in a way he never did in the big house. I joined a watercolor painting class at the community center. I started volunteering one afternoon a week at the local library, helping children with reading. I made a friend, a woman named Evelyn, who had also moved here after a divorce. We would have coffee and talk about books. My pension, which had seemed so inadequate before, now covered my modest rent, my groceries, my little pleasures with room to spare. The absence of that $4,000 monthly drain was a financial miracle. The silence in my apartment was not empty. It was full of my own thoughts, my own music from a small radio, my own peace. I had traded a mansion of disrespect for a studio apartment of self-respect, and the exchange rate, I realized with a quiet smile, was absolutely spectacular. A little over a year had passed. The seasons had turned once, then again. I had a routine of life. I had taken a trip with Marlene to see the fall colors in New England. I had a windowsill herb garden. I was against all odds happy, truly, deeply happy in a way I had forgotten was possible. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. David's voice was different. All the bluster, the anger, the manipulation was gone. He just sounded tired, defeated. Mom, can I see you? I need to talk, not on the phone. We met at a diner halfway between my apartment and his old neighborhood. He was already in a booth when I arrived. I barely recognized him. He had lost weight. His suit was wrinkled. There were deep lines around his eyes that had not been there a year ago. He stood when I approached, a ghost of the manners I had taught him. Mom, thanks for coming. We ordered coffee. He stirred his not meeting my eye for a long time. Then he started to talk. He told me everything. How they had tried to keep the house for 6 more months, scraping by before the bank started foreclosure proceedings. How they had sold it in a short sale, taking a huge loss. How Chloe had left a month after the move to a cramped apartment, saying she could not live like this. How he had lost his job, the pressure affecting his performance, and had only recently found another one with a much lower salary. He laid it all out, not as excuses, but as facts, a confession. I lost everything, Mom. The house, my wife. My son looks at me like I am a failure. He finally looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. And I did it to myself. I was so arrogant. I thought I was entitled to your money. I thought it was the cost of you being there. I lost sight of who you were. I just saw what you could pay for. I listened. I did not feel vindicated. I felt a profound, weary sadness. This broken man was my little boy. I had wanted to protect him from heartache, and in doing so, I had prevented him from becoming an adult. I had bought his dependence. When he was done, I spoke. David, you did not lose a bank. You lost a home. My home was always with you in my heart. But a home needs walls of respect and a foundation of love. You tore those down. You cannot blame the bank for foreclosing on an empty lot. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. I am so sorry, Mom, for all of it, for the word, for the planning, for not seeing you. I know, I said, and I did know. The apology was real born of true loss. I will always be your mother, and I will always be Liam's grandmother. I want to be in your lives, for birthdays, for holidays sometimes, to talk. I took a deep breath, setting the boundary that would allow that to happen. But there will be no more money, David. Not for bills, not for emergencies, not for gifts that are really subsidies. That part of our relationship is over. It has to be for both of us. He swallowed hard and nodded again, accepting the terms. It was the first real adult agreement we had ever made. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, plain envelope. I slid it across the table to him. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph of him at age 7 sitting on my lap, both of us grinning at the camera, and beneath it, a check, made out to him for $50. In the memo line I had written, "For a fresh start." He stared at it, confusion, then a painful understanding washing over his face. It was not a financial rescue, it was a symbol, a closing of a ledger, a small, tangible seed for something new built on different ground. He clutched the photograph and began to cry in earnest, quiet, shuddering sobs right there in the diner booth. I walked away from that coffee shop feeling the last knot of resentment loosen and fall away. He was my son, broken by his own choices. I was his mother, no longer broken by mine. The wind outside was cold, but the sun was shining. These days, my life has a new rhythm, a gentler one. I wake up with the sun not with a sense of duty, but with a sense of possibility. I make my coffee and sit in my armchair by the window watching the birds at the feeder I hung. I read the books I want to read. On Tuesdays, I volunteer at the library. The children call me Miss Naomi. On Thursdays, I have my painting class. I'm terrible at it, but I love the swirl of color on the paper. My relationship with David is quiet, and it is real. He calls once a month just to talk. He tells me about his new job, which is humble but honest. He asks about my garden. He does not ask for anything. We are learning how to be mother and son without a dollar sign between us. It is fragile, but it is growing. Liam is in community college. He comes over for dinner every other week. We order Chinese food, or I make a simple pasta. He tells me about his classes, his friends, a girl he likes. He talks about the stress of his parents' divorce, but he also talks about his future. He is finding his way. I listen. I am his safe harbor, and that is a richer role than any bank could ever be. Marlene is my partner in crime. We go to flea markets, we watch old movies, we complain about our knees. She never says, "I told you so." She just is there, a testament to the fact that a woman alone is not a woman lacking. I think about that Christmas often. The pain of it has faded, leaving behind a deep, important scar, a lesson etched into my soul. Love should be a gift, not a transaction. The moment you start paying for your seat at the family table, you have already been asked to leave. Getting older does not make you a burden. Letting others convince you that your worth is tied to your utility does. My worth is in my stories, my quiet mornings, my ability to choose my own tomorrow. Sometimes the strongest action is not a scream, but a silent withdrawal. Not of love, but of the resources that allow disrespect to thrive. I did not stop loving my son. I stopped funding the version of him that had forgotten how to love his mother. He wanted a life without a burden. Well, he got one. And so did I. I am lighter than I have been in decades. The door to my old life is closed, locked, and the key thrown away. But the window by my favorite chair lets in a perfect square of sunlight every afternoon. It is warm, it is free, and it is entirely, beautifully mine. If you have stayed with me until now, thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love? What did you learn about yourself in the process? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like. It lets me know I am not alone in these experiences. And if you want to hear more stories about finding strength and peace in later chapters of life, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Sharing this video might just help someone else who is feeling like a burden find the courage to reclaim their light. Thank you for listening, and remember, your peace is always worth the price. Be well.